Hey, Jason.
Hey, Thomas. We're live on Facebook and recording right now.
Okie dokie.
Gonna start letting people in as we open up the doors to the pub.
Okay.
We got Tina, Steven, and Jade coming in. And hello to everybody on Facebook right now, tuning in.
Where's Timony?
She's not feeling well today. She won't be joining us.
Oh, okay. Oh, dear.
Let's get some volume.
Hi, Jade.
Hello. How are you, Thomas?
I'm good, thank you. Bit tired, but I'm good. Hi, Tina.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Tina. Here's Christian.
Hi,
Steven.
Hi, guys. How you doing?
Hi.
Oh, for fuck's sake, is the camera off again?
There's Christian.
Oh dear, that's a good start.
Oh, no, there we It did this shit to me in the High Court on Thursday, and you know there was a court case going on, and I was like a goldfish looking out for bowl at my court case just beginning to kind of manifest in front of me. I didn't go to prison though, so everything's okay. There was a happy ending.
Oh, that's good.
Good.
Happy ending.
You know what happened? There's Greg. Yes, Greg. I went to the toilet earlier and I didn't make a video. Greg. Like Eamon Keane. Eamon Keane was talking about this shit. I said, do you want me to start a fucking OnlyFans? You know, just for him. He'd have to pay well for that one, I can tell you. Many years ago, I had to get a colonoscopy, and you have to fast for 36 hours and you take this thing called clean prep. And I said, I bet they smuggled this shit into the gay porn studios, because this stuff, you can't beat this shit. You know, in terms of production, you know, the practicalities of producing gay blueies, that stuff would be gold dust, absolutely gold dust. But anyway, listen, I'm sorry. We've got off to a typical start here, so I do apologize. You know,
All good.
Is it take you anywhere?
We're live on Facebook right now.
well, probably not for much longer at this rate.
No, we're good. As long as everybody sticks with the popular vernacular. Last time we had a couple of people say a few things that could have gotten us taken down. I had to edit out. But...
That's right, yeah. And I mean, at the risk of sounding condescending and to be slightly more serious, we need to be selective about who we associate with and who we let on. This is a platform, you know, beyond Room 313, whether you're aware of it or not, is acquiring a momentum that a lot of people, even in the mainstream, are seeing. And there'll always be trouble and hangers on. So, you know, we need to be careful. We need to be careful.
Yes. So, how's everybody doing today? Everybody having a good week so far?
Yes.
Absolutely mental.
Yeah. Yeah.
What happened, Jade? I heard you comment a couple of times on MeWe that you were having a particularly paranormal week.
I've had pictures flying off the walls. I've had orbs coming through my ceiling. It's been like a bus station in my house this week.
Oh.
Unreal.
Any reason why you think?
Well, I'm not sure. I think my resident house guests that I share their house, they weren't very happy about something that came back with the boys, because it was a picture of the boys that flew off the wall. Ooh. So we've smudged the house, smudged the children. They both swept their bedrooms out with the broom and swept it all out the front door without me saying anything to them.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty weird stuff, and lots of strange dreams as well. Like we're back to technicolor dreaming.
I've had remarkable dreams lately. Profound. I'm not going to tell you what they are, but they're profound.
Well, I went down to the house in Wicklow yesterday, and I think some of you may have seen on Facebook, I put up about a 5 or 6 second video of the full moon that was over Wicklow at that time. And I mean, I had a dream, which I don't know exactly how the content of the dream correlated, but when I woke up, I realized that the real counterculture in this country focuses around John and Gemma. That's a genuine counterculture around John and Gemma. I don't know why I made that link in my brain at the time, But as I said in an Odyssey video then I did later last night or earlier this morning, all the teenagers know John and Gemma. I mean, you don't hear them criticizing them or doing that shit that the mainstream media do about John and Gemma. Far from it. But, you know, the kids, don't be worried about the teenagers of the early 20s, because they're the first generation who are not addicted to RTE. They're getting their news off social media. So they're quite a wise and street smarty group who I've met on the beach behind our house. No, it actually gave me great heart. But John and Gemma are the counterculture here. Genuinely, John and Gemma are the counterculture. And who would have thought it? You know?
That's interesting, really. You know, I'm looking at the aspects of entertainment, and it was interesting because about, say, 3 a.m. last night, this animation crowd, this little comedy group, they just started up with their new project there. But it was an interesting bit of time as well. They planned it for just 3 a.m. and it comes up around on Irish time. And it's just a nice little story because you have this family and they're all men, but yeah, they're basically all just playing around and being a bunch of little vampire hunters. And yeah, it's a horrible, dark little world, but like they are just so absurd, a bunch of characters themselves. They have a bit of fun. It's a bit of counterculture because people are trying to go and bring that light into their new lives in this new year coming ahead, despite all the rest of the shit that's going on. I found that to be a very interesting parallel.
Well, I was actually watching Russ Naroon on TG Cahir tonight, and one of the characters in Russ Naroon has started a bootleg business of smuggling in masks and PCR tests. This is true. This is the story of Russ Naroon. And I've said to you this before, TG Cahir isn't RTE. They're taking the piss out of this. We roared laughing at it. And he had all the PCR tests and masks buried in a fucking bog out the back of Russ Naroon. It's brilliant.
That's great.
It's great. I think TG Cahir, they're really subversive, TG Cahir are. They're really out of the envelope, they are. No, it was super. Absolutely super.
I gotta go consider that a bit more, honestly. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting over the next few years. We're probably going to lose RTE as state broadcaster if the pressure is applied in the right places, and certainly when it comes to how they treat things like defamation and things like, you know, actual big world news, and of course as well the actual intellectual properties in Ireland. Like, they couldn't even get behind Father Ted. Why would they be arsed? Why would anyone be arsed with them as well? We're just getting more and more stories of people just dropping it. Well,
at the start of 2020, I approached the commissioning editor in RTE and I said that I would finance a 6-part sitcom for them that would be recorded in studio over about a 2-week period. I'd script it, I'd produce it fully, I'd finance it for them. And all that I would do is that they would allow us that slot to broadcast it on RTE1 or RTE2. And they said no. So that's what you're dealing with there. And, you know, the deal I was offering them was Montrose would not have to pay any money for this. I'd be giving them, it's 23 minutes that you produce it to. I'd give them that. And all that I would insist on is that I retain the copyright of it. So DVD sales, anything else, they're mine. They're not RTE's. It wouldn't be an RTE program. It'd be my program broadcast on RTE. No.
So they couldn't have it.
We get more yummy mummy shite from Amy Huberman. You know, all of her boring narcissistic shite from Amy Huberman. And she's on fucking everything on RTE, Amy Huberman is. Like, there was another program on TG Cahir presented by a woman called Shiafran O'Rourke. And she's like, Shiafran O'Rourke is elegant and has poise in a way none of those losers in Montrose has. Like, the women on TG Cahir remind me of old school Irish women, you know, who are elegant and pretty and clever and confident and well-educated. Instead, we get Doireann Garrihy, you know, on RTE. But it doesn't matter because I don't watch RTE.
Been 2 years since we've been together, and I'd be interested in Thomas's view, well, everyone's view on this, but I felt like in the last 7 days that we have entered into something else. That's the only way I can express it. I don't know what else to say. Something has changed in the last week. I'm still trying to work out what it is.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. I feel different this week than last week. I basically stopped watching, paying any attention to the current run of Bob Bollocks, mostly. A lot of that. The odd thing I was looking at that people sent me, but mostly I ignored it. And I've been watching other things instead to see how the rest of the world is going on. Now, while we're all wrapped up in this, the billionaires and the millionaires and the ones who are planning the Great Reset, they're not. They're off doing their own little bullshit. So I started watching like property development videos and reading articles about property development, and the kind of fuckers who are telling us, you know, they're saying things like the Great Reset, you will own nothing and you'll be happy, and this abolition of private property. And so I started to see, well, the fuckers who are doing this, what's their lives like? What's their property portfolios like? And they're investing in play. They're up to a person. They're rapidly buying up high-end property in places like Billionaires Row in Manhattan. And they're buying these apartments with no intention of living in them. And what they do is they buy, I'm not kidding you, this apartment's going in Manhattan now for over $100 million for like a 4-bedroom apartment, $100 million. And they're buying these apartments in cities around the world with no intention of living in them. They're just purely investments. And why they're doing this, and I've been reading some things by top economists, is they're trying to make, well, if you have, like in financial speak, you have liquidity, right? The most liquid thing there is cash. You can spend €1 anywhere, $1 anywhere, £1 anywhere, and get what you value for that. The least liquid thing in any kind of economic format is property. It cannot be, because there's so many different types of property and different types of houses. And these guys, these financial strategists in Wall Street, and these very clever people are saying that the billionaires, what they're really doing is they're making property very, very expensive to put it out of the hands of the ordinary people, and therefore turning that into a liquid asset they can sell. So when they say we will own nothing and be happy and we won't have any property, they will completely control all the property on earth, all of it themselves. And what they do then is they will rent it out to public utilities like councils and cities and governments to put us in it. We will own nothing and we will be happy. And they will be sold as they will assume the risk of the property ownership, but they've already got the assets to buy up everything. And we are relieved of the burden of the mortgage, the burden of the high rent. But it's all to do with them turning property into something like stocks and shares. So you can say, like, I've got 5,000 houses in Melbourne. I want to sell them, buy 2,000 apartments in London. And this is what I'm starting to figure out now. And you were saying the last week has been different. The last week has been different because it shifted my focus to another place. And I'm starting to see what these fuckers are really up to. They're bankrupting us so they can buy a property all around the world. And we're definitely heading towards a big financial problem coming at the moment, particularly into the cost of living index. Inflation has gone through the roof, but because they calculate inflation now across the entire economic spectrum, property, cars, stocks, investments, household goods, and food and lodging, we don't see the massive increases. If they were to do it like the old cost of living index and just squeeze, and we were just to see what the price of food was costing now, we'd be looking at inflation rates of 30 and 40%. We're talking Weimar Republic inflation rates on food at the moment, but they're completely hiding it from us. And that's what you're saying about the last week things changed. Last weekend, I said, okay, I'm no longer interested in this whole Rona thing. I want to see the people who are behind it, what they're up to. And it's quite apparent now that this is a gigantic fire sale on property. And that's what it's really all about. And that was my week, was like to jump out of that and to jump into this.
Yes. Private property is freedom. That's it.
Well, I'm going to express a bit of an extremist view here, but I would genuinely take him up on that and go live in a tent somewhere in the forest rather than go live in one of those.
Yep. And remember, your rent will be directly payable according to the value of the actual asset. So therefore, if they buy a bunch of, if you move to somewhere in Italy like Rome, right? And you get a very nice apartment or a nice house somewhere in Rome. I'm just saying, speculating, right? And some property, these fuckers own it, right? And it's not bringing in the money they want. Well, they will actually artificially inflate the value of their holding by increasing your rent. You see, you will own nothing and you'll be happy. You see, they'll be happy. They'll own everything and be ecstatic. And that's all this whole thing is. It's a big, And a big part of it is the cost of living has gone through the roof. And now I'm starting to wonder about things like the Suez Canal shipping blockage, all the other blockages in the ocean, the containers being all held off the coast of California. They're deliberately inflating the cost of living to make renting and home ownership increasingly difficult. So people will say, I have the choice choose between feeding the kids this week and paying the rent. Well, then they say, well, let us relieve you of the burden of paying your mortgage. And it's real evil what these fuckers are up to. And they're doing it with farms and everything, not just residential properties.
Yeah, well, I'm not really too close to the... Sorry, go on.
There is a wood beside where, in fact, there's two woods beside where I live. We should raise lots of money and buy the woods and create lots of nice little log cabins.
I'll be up for that. I would be totally up for that. I would.
Ironically,
it belongs to somebody in London.
Yep. How did the Jews who survived the Nazis mostly survive? They ran into the woods. And they lived in the forest sometimes for years and years. The ones in Belarus, huge communities of them lived in the forest. And these are city people, and they had to retrain themselves. And most of them survived.
The woods have always been the refuge of this societal outcasts. That's why the Romans cut them all down while they came here.
Yep. And why the Elizabethans cut down all the forests in Ireland. Yep.
Yeah, I've known two people in recent years who lived completely off-grid for years. One was a guy, and it wasn't so far from here, and he just lived up in the woods for years. He went through the kind of children's home system as a kid, and then ended up in sort of supported accommodation and stuff like that. And he just ran away every time, and he just he was excellent at hunting and fishing. And eventually just moved up into the woods. And I haven't seen him for years. I don't know what happened to him in the end, if he's still there or if he kind of ended up, rehoused somewhere. But every so often the local authority would get involved and try to kind of, put him in a house, and he would kind of stick it for a few days until he got off his back. And then he would just leg it and disappear back to the woods. But the other one was kind of more impressive. It was a woman who I used to bump into at a couple of different festivals, and she lived for years in a wood next to a loch up north, and she raised two kids there as well. I mean, she does now. She eventually moved into a house, but she kept that going for years, living in the wild, completely off grid. Living mostly without money.
There is a similar story about a woman that lived on the Russian taiga. So it is very extreme weather conditions there. So it is possible. And she was a woman on her own. She also had children there. She had to make a little fire just to have a warm cup of tea of things in a small plot of land. It wasn't even like 5 square meters, but she survived. It's doable.
Yeah, humans are incredibly resourceful. Look at the Faroe Islands. You think to yourself, how could anyone live in the Faroe Islands? Trees can't even grow there. And there was thousands and thousands of people living there and still are. And surviving fine. Long before the modern economy came along, there was thousands of them.
I remember catching...
Sorry, Carl, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I remember catching this odd story, I think it was about, say, last year, about a population that's out by a county in Fermanagh or something. It's a little village, and they were starting to go and close down a load of post offices all across the rural Ireland, okay, because they just didn't have the people in the actual area to go and support it all, just an aging population. But loads of little towns like that, outside by the main cities and everything like that, people could just, think to go and move out there, take advantage of the low property rates that there would probably be, and just go and start up a community from scratch. Still having a little bit of access to the grid, but, having that freedom and having that liberty to be in your own little place.
Yeah, it can be done. There's good news regarding this whole thing with these properties, these billionaires scooping up all the property. They're not finding it easy first. Secondly, they don't have enough money to do it, even with all their wealth. They don't have enough money to actually make their plan work at the moment. But the best thing of all is they're finding themselves at loggerheads of politicians, because the politicians lose control of things like how to run a society. The politicians basically lose all their power. So they're running into the first experiment was this place called Billionaires Road in New York, where they basically built these very thin skyscrapers that are residential skyscrapers along Central Park. And most of them are empty. And it's basically sent a shock around New York. It's like that these people have been like, so basically they're building these skyscrapers in our city as investments that cost a colossal amount of money and nobody lives in them. Now, the politicians don't like this because being what they are, they want control too. And if these billionaires take control of all the property and all the assets and all the running of cities and so on, politicians are and the bureaucrats are out of the job. There's nothing for them to do. So it's not set in stone. There's a lot of hope actually that it may well fail because it's in a massively ambitious plan to kind of offset this new technological disaster that's going to like affect inflation and everything else. They don't want a world where everyone has a level playing field. This is why they don't like the internet. They ultimately don't like the internet because I can start up a TV show and get the same ratings as the 6 o'clock news in Ireland. You know, the kind of thing, the same numbers of people listening to me. And they hate the internet. The same thing will happen with everything else they do. So they're seeing this as the last roll of their dice. They're not going to get it, though, because you can actually see they're up against it. And what happened, they did it in the wrong place. They did it in New York at first. And that's one of the reasons Cuomo was driven out of office. He was the one who gave them all planning permission to build these like investment towers. And there's another thing as well. You know what the other city in the world where it's happened is? Melbourne. Melbourne. And you look at all the shit that's going on there with Melbourne, with all the lockdown and Dan Andrews and everything, and it's starting to make an awful lot of sense, isn't it? It's like, it's starting to make a huge amount of sense that the billionaires have bought all the politicians in Melbourne.
Well, another city where that shite is being tried is Dublin, believe it or not. And then it may sound narcissistic, and of course, Dublin isn't on the scale, say, of Manhattan or Melbourne. But in 2016, Fine Gael brought in laws which would allow big builders to build blocks of flats beyond the quantity of 100 units without having to get planning permission through a local authority. Now, I'd said to people before then, but at that point I said to people, if you don't realise what page Fine Gael is on now, you're never going to. And they still don't, of course. But what we're seeing now with all of those, that wacky legislation that allows big builders to build any structure without more than 100 units without planning permission through a local authority, every single time that's been brought, somebody has challenged it by judicial review. And it's interesting to see the sentiment of the judges. And I won't say too much, but I understand why Fine Gael don't like judges that much. The biggest asset, and getting back to Manhattan and getting back to the stuff we're saying earlier, the biggest asset that billionaires take in isn't money, it's time. Because if you have a site in an area, say like Howth, and because of litigation or because of all of the uncertainty that litigation causes, the builder cannot build on that site. So he's got a big hole in the ground for 9 months, 10 months, 11. People are saying, why is he not building in the big hole in the ground? And what that very immediate semiotic does is it collapses confidence. And it's a Ponzi scheme. They're all fucking in a Ponzi scheme. And if the confidence goes out of a Ponzi scheme, the Ponzi scheme collapses a second later. And this is why it's not about money, it's about time. That's my own take on it. I may be wrong. But when you look at how the courts work and how big business works, it's about time.
Sorry, I just quickly, I'm reading Daniel Defoe's diary about the Great Plague of London. And that was followed by the Great Fire of London. And that's basically what ended the plague. And there's always been stories that Great Fire of London was deliberately set. And guess what followed the Great Fire of London? Well, the Great Building of London, the Great Reset, the restoration, Sir Christopher Wren, all the buildings of all these new streets all around London, and so on. So it's interesting history. Like I made a video recently called Every 100 Years about you have like a cleansing, like at the Napoleonic Wars, and then then you have the World War One. They remove the population and they begin again with the good times. But it seems to be, and now I've traced it now back to the Great Plague of London and the Great Fire of London. That was probably the first one that they did that. And they used these catastrophes this Great Reset is nothing new. The Enlightenment was a great reset. The Restoration was a great reset. The French Revolution was a great reset. Even like Garibaldi's revolution in Italy was a great reset. The way he standardized the language and everything else like that. They've been doing this all the time. It's just now that they have the ability, they have the ability, that doesn't mean they're going to do it on a global scale because of the internet.
Thomas, what you were saying recently, you referred to your last video, your videos, and you mentioned the Georgia Guidestones. And earlier I mentioned feeling that something had changed in the last week. I have to say that I don't know why it is, but I feel less put upon, less oppressed, less harassed in the last week with all of the Rona and the needlecraft and all of that. I feel less put upon by that.
Let's take this into the 313 sphere, right? Where we think about outside the box. Last week, during the week, I started because of that conversation about Dolly's braces in the Bond movie. Now videos are starting to appear with the braces on her, and they're using all kinds of dummy excuses and things like that. And I said, what if we're living in two overlapping versions of reality, and now they're clipping against each other? I mean, this is Anthony Peake territory. Great to have him on here sometime to talk about this. But that'd be two versions of reality clipping it over each other. And just the very fact that we've acknowledged that we're in this kind of mutant reality right now, that we're now flying back into the original one. And is that why you feel less pressure, Greg? And I feel different. Has the realization that we're, what I've been doing that expression, what we have, we hold. We hold it at this point, but now we're going back. And I'm starting, when that Dolly thing, I can't get my head around it. It's remarkable. It's absolutely fucking incredible. And there's no way anyone can explain in terms of DVD, director specials and stuff like that. That thing is absolutely surreal. And then there's other things. And then there's inexplicable. That's exactly right, Christian. And then there's other things that have been mentioned that have been completely inexplicable as well. But that's the most obvious one. And I often find it strange is that what was the thing we saw most of all in Dolly and Jaws? The smile. What are we deprived of right now at Masks? The smile. And it was almost like when I'm not saying I did it, because a lot of people have been noticing this all over the world at the same time, that maybe that's what's happening now. We've stopped this kind of like this break that may have happened in 9/11, and we're now flying. We're now moving back into the original Matrix, and that's probably why people that we've known are complete strangers to us now. We can't even communicate with them anymore now because they're literally part of a construct, a sort of like a quantum construct that we're no longer in, or we never really were in, and we're going back to our old one.
It was so obvious the whole time that Dolly had braces.
I know, it's the only joke. It was the joke. It was, and when I saw that, and then Rod Anger, his name is, on Collective Learning, did a great thing of it, and he said, yes, I definitely remember her having braces, but he went and checked VHS, DVDs, all kinds of playbacks. He looked at it on TV. It was broadcast one night, and he said she had no braces. So he goes, and then he put down, well, maybe I'll put it down to false memory. And then you say, well, that's an excuse, but that's a hell of an excuse because that removes the butt of the joke. Now we all start talking about it. And in the last couple of weeks, people are finding videos. The most remarkable story being, and this is the one that blew my mind, is Houston, we have a problem. The Apollo 13. It was on a Reddit discussion about that. And I've always known as Houston, we have HAVE, a problem, both in the movie and the original TV broadcast. Sure enough, Tom Hanks now says, Houston, we had HAD. I'm talking about a few months ago, was saying, we had a problem. And I even went back and checked that, because we watched Apollo 13, and I said, God, was that a false memory with me? Now people are reporting on Reddit that the DVD that they checked last year where he said, the same DVD in their box in their house where he said, we had a problem, he's now saying, we have a problem.
I think the glamour is falling apart entirely.
Yeah, we're flipping back into the reality that we came from. And that's why I think Greg and so many of us feel a bit more different this week.
Well, I felt very different after watching The Week in Strange. And The Week in Strange, like just last Monday's Week in Strange, I was knackered tired. I was in foul humour. The internet was really playing up. So I had to download it to listen to it, but I've been in a different humor. I felt physically different since I listened to it last Monday. I mean that without any exaggeration. I felt physically different. It was superb. It was one of the best pieces of social media, or actually one of the best pieces of media I've heard in 5 years, was particularly last week's Week in Strange. And I think it was why I decided, despite the fact that I was in a foul humor and the internet was shit, that I decided to listen to it anyway, because I've loved the Week in Strange. I always loved the Week in Strange, but that was fabulous. I'm going to open my drink to toast the Week in Strange tonight. It's a can of ginger ale tonight. So I don't have the Schweppes bottles. Somebody took them, don't know. But so here's to the Week in Strange, and congratulations on the terrific.
Thank you, Christian.
Congratulations. Super, super show.
Yeah, and just fantastic content altogether, guys, with all the discussions and stuff that you've had. Haven't caught up on everything that you've done yet, but it's been that real kind of, fantastic output that you've been doing, great production values as well.
So, thank you. We've got a lot of good stuff coming up too as well. I've got now that the Christmas work is over for me in a couple of days, I'll have we have the whole beginning of the new year to produce all new documentaries and footage that we've accumulated. So I'm very excited about it.
Cheers.
Hey, better.
Thomas.
Yes.
I tried your inspiration in the shower thing this morning, and then I had to get out of the shower to go and get my phone and press record, because I kept getting all these poems and things coming through, and I wouldn't have been able to write them down, apart from the fact that I was soaking wet, but I had to speak them into my phone.
Yep.
So I've almost finished writing the first chapter of a children's story.
Beautiful.
Just like that.
Well done.
But I find the shower is a very kind of like transcendental place. I often find I solve a lot of problems in the shower. I don't know what it is, the sensation of warm running water going over me. I find a very cleansing psychological kind of thing.
Funny, I do things in the shower as well.
Absolutely.
I don't want to get a YouTube strike here, so it'll just
But one of the other things about when you're in the shower is you're grounded. You're grounded through the water going down the pipe.
Yes, definitely believe that. And also you have nice shampoos and soaps that helps relax you, and you just feel the nice smells like a lavender or something, coconut. It's those kinds of things I find very relaxing aromas.
It's also the human body is mostly made of water, and it's related to the subconscious and everything. And I think water is very important to us. We need it to survive. For instance, if we go, 3 days without water, we die. We just die.
Yeah.
You can live for a couple of weeks without food as long as you have water.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I'm very well used to feeling things in the shower. Whether I'm alone or not, that's another issue. But again, I don't want to, listen, please. I could
Christian,
say...
Christian, it's a family show. It's a family show.
No.
An Adam's family show, but it's still a family show.
And it won't get us a strike. The only thing that will get us a strike is the great unmentionable. That's,
I know.
Thomas, by the way, the Fire of London. What year was the Fire of London?
1666.
There's your numerology for you.
Yeah. And the year before, people were living in terror of something that kind of happened.
Yeah. Crazy. Getting back onto this week.
Having sex in the shower is like...
What's that?
Having sex in the shower is amazing.
Well, listen, I could...
Not if it's one of those tiny... If it's one of those tiny showers, Sorry.
Smaller the better. But it's when the shower is smaller, it's more of a challenge. But listen, I'll do an Odyssey on it. There's all my fans will be asking me to do an OnlyFans on this. So I'll do it on Odyssey. I can say whatever the fuck I want to on Odyssey.
I heard your Christian. I heard your
No, this is Thomas. It's a family show. No, we're not talking about what I did in Odyssey 2 days ago. Please. That was just true. Do you know something? A line was crossed, and it wasn't big, it wasn't clever, and nobody's impressed. I'll do it again, though. Speaking of something that's not big, clever, and nobody's impressed. Of course, we all saw the shite protest in Dublin yesterday because nobody was impressed. I mean, that was just fucking atrocious what happened in Smithfield yesterday. And I downloaded 4 hours of material of that. So, you know, like I'm set up now. I got all their, I got down all their videos. So I'm ready to go with this shit, you know.
And then you could be creative, do a new one.
But what we also saw in the Sunday Independent today was what we predicted. You know, they're feasting on that poor fella who went up to Pat Kenny in the park last week. And of course, sure enough, there's we could have written it. There's this horrible smug, oh, wasn't Pat brilliant and didn't he handle it so well article in today's Sunday Independent. Even like Jean Kerrigan has gone back onto the establishment message in the Sunday Independent today. So obviously the hidden hand is moving there. But the protest in Dublin yesterday was absolutely atrocious. It was another level of cringe. And it is really forcing people to say, look, I'd love to go to that protest and say to them, what do you think has been achieved? What's the net result of this? What have you done? How have you managed? You know, there was this woman who was just like, she was just like a patronizing primary teacher, which actually she is. And she was doing this song, you know, we're not going to take it anymore. Sorry, Pet, you are. You are going to take it, Pet, right? Make me a sandwich and you are going to take it.
Did you see Dee Snider said nobody's to use, anti-maskers are not to use the song. We're not going to take it.
Oh, don't worry, I won't. I can guarantee that one for her. She's going to fucking copyright it. Is it?
No. It's just that he, you know, Mr. Heavy Metal, Mr. You know, anti-establishment.
Yeah,
as usual. So many people in the music business, biggest phonies of them all.
Oh yeah. And Billy Bongo is there. Thomas, Billy Bongo. Billy Bongo made it.
I have to talk. I have a confession about Billy Bongo. I played with him once. His name is Kieran. He's a very, very nice guy. He's a very religious Christian guy. There's nothing wrong with him as a person, but he's one of these. He's always going to all the protests. But I found a photograph of me and him playing together from about 11 years ago. And you know what the song was? Another Prick in the Doll being the Irish government. And he says, can you play Another Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd? And I said, sure, I can. Yeah, it's an easy song to play. So I was playing that on the guitar, and he sang that and with his bongo. But 12 years later, he's still doing the same thing. You'd think he would have got it by now. As nice a guy as he is. It doesn't fucking work.
I mean, we changed our material. We evolve. You know, we haven't stuck with the same thing for 12 years. Jesus.
Yes. Pointing about Dee Snider, as you say, Thomas, and I've found in a life in heavy metal that these guys can be super conservative, really surprisingly so.
Oh, yeah. I saw him in Long Island when I lived in Long Island, in Huntington, Long Island. I saw him in his Ferrari, and he was just like, it was like this. I think it was the first time I'd ever seen a red Ferrari like that, like, you know, a classic like sports car like that. And he was standing outside and talking to two guys at this garage. Now he seemed like a nice enough ordinary fella, but he is a conservative type. He is, you know, despite all his things like Mr. Heavy Metal, you know, standing up against the PMRC and all this. I got the impression very much so that he was Mr. Suburbia. Mr. Suburbia with long hair and fingernail polish.
Yeah, totally. And by the way, we have to be careful when we bandy about the term conservative, you know, because like I think Ron Paul.
Yeah, orthodoxy. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, so
straight-laced.
Yeah.
Yeah, straight-laced. Well, you see that famous photograph of the singer from Metallica, and it shows fans of Metallica, and the guy's all in leather with tattoos. And it goes, the singer from Metallica, he's standing outside like a Gucci shop, dressed, looking like a regular suburban guy.
God damn. But yeah, there's a lot of power in the internet, I think. And for a lot of individual creators and such, like that animation I was talking to you about, what's its hits now? It's about 146,000 views since last night. That's capital. That's just people making their own communities, making their own entertainment, and just people coming together in their own little synergy and making something a little bit brighter in the world. And I think it's going to have a knock-on effect there. I mean, people are going to have things to enjoy about life again. And I mean, for all the rest of the shit that they're going to be still spewing out there because they're still stuck in their programming, I mean, they're not going to even be aware of everyone tuning out. And when they will, they'll try to go and move over to this new space and say, hey, but they're just going to start it up again, but no one's falling for it now, you know?
Well, we'll always move on. We'll always be one step ahead of them. So what we're doing today, you know, we won't necessarily be doing it 5 years from now. And that's okay. We will all continue to evolve, and they don't. They follow. That's because they're normies. That's because they're sheep.
Yeah, that's it. And, well, they don't have their finger on the pulse for a lot of people, even my generation, never mind the kids. So I guess I could just take advantage of that and just go and make some entertainment for people in my own little geeky way. That wouldn't be too bad.
One of the advantages of the kids who are in their late teens and early 20s now is that they're accustomed to getting their stuff off the internet, which is by its nature eclectic. So they're not stuck with the mindset of, oh, we'll just get it all off RTE. They have a different fundamental outlook to how they get their information. And that's what, you know, as I said, this summer, I came across so many of these kids who'd be 19, 20, and I wouldn't worry about them. They know it's bullshit. They're fairly switched on from what I've seen. But also the fundamental difference is that they're getting it all from different sources, and they know to go out and get different stuff on their iPhones, from Instagram, from TikTok, from wherever. But they're not stuck in a mindset of, oh, RTE shall be our only voice of reason here. And that's very significant.
Oh, absolutely. And it's an international thing, I think. Yeah, just this demand for getting fresher entertainments, easy and, you know, actually followed through information travel, you know, information flow. It's going to happen. And people who are actually naturally inclined to that, they do have the outlet to go and do that. There have been examples of successful people who've gotten their own websites and they're pushing out and branching out to do their own things, and the smears aren't working anymore.
No,
the smears are just not working anymore.
Oh, and you see the heritage.
And all the people at the heart of the... Sorry, go on.
Go on. All the people at the heart you were saying.
No.
No, I was just saying, like, the heritage media did very well out of the Rona. They mattered for the first time in decades. And it went to their heads. You know, they got money off governments and everything to sell propaganda. They did very well, the heritage media, all around the world from it for a while. Yeah. But I think that when they collapse now, they will collapse completely. And you're going to see the national TV stations in many countries now being dismantled and changed into something else, whether it's the BBC, RT, or even like the PBS in America or whatever. I think they're all going to be dismantled now. And they have served their purpose. They got a little bit of an extra shot of life in the arm from the Rona, but it's over now.
The Rona for them was a dead cat bounce because this was coming anyway. And something also that is unfolding as we speak is the issue of Senator Sharon Keoghan. Now, Sharon Keoghan, you know, she's a senator, she's a conventional politician, but she's like those women I've referred to earlier. She's elegant, she's well-spoken, she's articulate, she's sharp. And I mean, she's far ahead of any of the losers in the Dáil. I mean, she's streets ahead of any of them. And this is why, in my opinion, Fine Gael, do you remember they had the referendum to abolish the Seanad? They wanted to get rid of the Senate. You can see why now, because Keoghan has been excluded from a subcommittee in the Oireachtas in relation to the Gender Equality Bill. And they've been fairly straightforward about the fact that it's because she has the wrong opinions. And Keoghan gave a speech a while ago, about 2 weeks ago, about the issue of the misappropriation of women's identity by that lobby. And we
have to be very careful here because this is a big time strike on YouTube. What did you call it? The heritage skit scheme or something?
There's the loyalty scheme, but there's also the play actors. That's how I'll describe them. Yeah. And Keoghan has now found herself aligned with other very well-educated, elegant, you know, the kind of people who want to be left alone. Those, once you cross them, you're in trouble. And there's another crowd of women, very educated women, who are taking on that particular 2015 piece of statute, which is, we're now looking closer at that, how that was such a colourable piece of legislation used to smuggle in. Even one of the friends from that particular NGO described it as a Trojan horse, and she gave out, she kind of let her mask slip when she described it as that. You know, Keoghan, though, now has been excluded from an Oireachtas. I mean, we won't get a strike on saying something that is just on the Oireachtas record. She's been excluded from an Oireachtas subcommittee discussing the further ramifications of 2015 bill, and she's not going to stand for that. And then the question is, she and those other very clever women who are aligned with her, they're not going to stand for that. And then the question inevitably arises of why RTE gave that lobby an absolutely uncritical platform since 2015 and are still continuing to do so. So it ties back in really, Thomas, to what you said. It's a dead cat bounce. And in the long term, these kind of people are going to be coming along wanting RTE held to account for what they've done.
Well, mainstream media, and it's full of nonsense and everything. Look at the BBC and Jimmy Savile and all that stuff. Look what happened there. I mean, look at all the perverts that were out in British politics and stuff like that. This is basically all part of that agenda. That whole, ultimately, I think it all feeds back to the Nazi stuff. I really do. All of it
does, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was saying in one of my Odyssey videos that, you know, in terms of production for adult movies, you'd almost ask Kieran Craven to do it, except we'd all be geriatrics in his eyes.
Thomas, you were talking about having you mentioned Anthony Peake, and that, you know, he'd be a good person to have as part of the group, and I agree. Thinking about his writing and the overarching concepts that inform his work, you know, life after death, the non-material realms. A couple of comments that I made earlier about feeling empowered in the past week and less oppressed and just uplifted. I love being alive. I love being part of this incarnation on this earth at this time. But even over the last few days, I've given less of a shit about this fucking car crash that the world is doing, what the world's doing. You know, I just don't care. And that, you know, I'm here for a while. You know, I'm 52. So who knows how long this body is going to survive? But I just don't fucking give a shit about what these people on the television are doing. I just don't care.
To stay in the spirit of Anthony Peake there, maybe your Damon Greg just knows that you're not part of that car crash.
You see, the thing was, Greg, it hurt you really bad at the beginning because of your life in the music business. And that was all gone in one go. So that was like almost like a divorce for you of that level of trauma. You know, you devoted your whole life to music and to writing about it, and suddenly it's gone. On top of that, like a divorce, you found out who your real friends were. You discovered that lots of people in the music business were not who you thought they were. They were not rebels. They were not anything like that. So it's just like a divorce. You find out, well, the ones you thought would side with you were the first to betray you. And so that hurts a lot. And then there's a grieving process where the old you has to kind of die to itself. And you've gone through that and you're out the other side. And that's what's happening now to, I think, a lot of us, that initial disappointment we had with our fellow man, I mean, man in the prerogative, is now past, and we're now ready to take things by the bollocks and go back and do our own thing. And I said, because I can remember how hurt you were, Greg, back then. You were in a bad way there for a while, and it's good to see it back normal. But that's why you went through a kind of a death to yourself in a kind of a way.
I'm really glad you said that, actually.
Not being your psychologist or anything, but I paid attention.
Yes. But
after death comes rebirth.
Was it the punk band Conflict? They were brilliant. Was it their album? And this is where we are right now. Time to see who's who.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm glad you said that about, you know, the thing of your world ending and then kind of being reborn. I think what's allowed me to kind of survive through all this is that I'd already gone through that process at the end of my kind of relationship, my actual divorce from my previous partner. And I felt at the time when that ended, like it was my partner who ended it with me. And I felt like at that very moment, that world that we created together, that kind of quantum reality that we made together, that kind of vanished, it ended. And I didn't know what the future was. For the first time ever, I had no vision of the path ahead, what was going to happen in my life. And I kind of went through a real kind of bad period of where I didn't want this life, and I couldn't see any way forward. And all I could do was kind of just get out of bed and make it to work. And I still managed to do my job, and I still managed to play gigs and stuff. But I think, since then, like, it's having been through that, the worst that I kind of, that I could imagine, it's allowed me to deal with all these other, really heavy things that have happened. I mean, as well as I've been a professional musician for 16 years, and, but for most of that, I've made my income from teaching, because that's a far more secure way to make your money as a musician. I've still played, I've still gigged lots with bands, I've still recorded, I've got albums in production now that are not completed yet. But but what happened with my kind of really secure job at a music school in Glasgow is, like, I was there for 8 years, and I built it up to a point where I could stop doing all the other kind of little bits of work and just have one teaching space that was mine. It had all my equipment in it, and I had my studio in there as well. I had my studio space for my use of it as a studio for free, because the money that my teaching brought in covered the rent. But I had to walk away from that at, July 2020, because my boss, they just kind of showed themselves to be, they closed the doors of the music school even before the comprehensive schools closed the doors for the lockdown in 2020. And I was so angry with them. And I could see that, one of the other big things that my boss was, we'd been at loggerheads for years over different issues and stuff, but there were enough positive aspects of working there that it was worthwhile staying. But from that moment on, I realized that it's just going to be a really stressful battle with him. And so I actually walked away from my secure regular income. I had 39 students before the lockdown, and I retained 25 of them, which was enough money to still live on. But I could see that I just couldn't deal with, like, the continual kind of battle with my boss over, wearing the thing across my face, or which I never did. And, I've had no fear to a certain degree with, like, what's happening and what's transpiring in the world, because, I know that we can kind of create a new path and a new reality. What you're saying about switching realities, I personally think that we do it more often than you think. That there's a continual switching of outcomes, realities. Different. Each one is a different universe in its own right.
Yeah, totally down with that. Totally agree with it.
Even while you were talking, I pulled a rune. I just did it out of a hunch, and it is this one: the cyclical nature, the harvest. What swings to the left will swing to the right. After winter comes spring. What goes down goes back up again.
Yeah.
Cool. A guy, an author, writer, he does a lot of things called Neil Kramer. He's an English guy, lives in America now, and he's a former radio guest of mine. And he did a post recently on Facebook, just a status update, and I really, really liked it. And it was about what we can expect from living, incarnating, as I mentioned earlier, on this earth at this time, and ideas about being happy and fulfilled, or what is that? And he said that basically being alive as a human in this time is what he always expected to be, which is part school, or education, and part battlefield, And I increasingly think that's what we're here for. There's lots and lots of mystery traditions and religious schools that have said that we choose to incarnate here, and there's a purpose for it, and it's a challenge. So that's how I like to think about particularly the time that we're in now. And I think that's partly why, as has been mentioned a couple of times, already this evening that I feel so uplifted in the last week that I feel that I'm living my purpose.
Good.
And,
I can totally resonate with that as well.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe that too. That we choose this somehow.
Yeah, I think we are altering the matrix now in our favor. I really do believe it, and a huge part of that is because we're seeing how not to do it, and how not to do it is to protest and be angry. How to do it is to actually be yourself, go with the flow, and recognize these high strangeness anomalies when they happen. That's like synchronicities. That's usually enough.
John Waters said it, and I think he even said it in an interview with Greg. There is a sense, and John articulated it. John, of all of the people who are commenting on this, I have found that John is very eloquent, and John comes out with a lyrical way that hits on things in an emotional way that many others don't. I've taken a great degree personally of comfort from John Waters. John Waters,
big time, yeah. I've watched his videos on My Darkest Day. And I've actually felt so much better just by being reassured by the sound of his voice.
Isn't that absolutely true?
He has this kind of magic, almost sainted quality. And imagine like the people who talk the way they talk about, great holy figures. I don't know, maybe Saint Martin or someone like that. He has that element about him. There's a genuine reassurance about just, even no matter what he's talking about, the world is in a better place because he's here.
Absolutely. And the kids, even the ones on the beach, they have that vibe off him. They all like him. They all trust him. The 17, the 18, the 19-year-olds, they are listening. Don't think they're not listening. They are listening. But it's what John did say. He said, and I think he even said it, Greg, in an interview with you, because you did a great interview with John around, I think, September. And, John said, isn't there a perception that we were meant for this moment?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we interviewed Mary Fall last week, and she even said that, that vibe, it was about now or something.
And going along with what Thomas was saying there and earlier too about how they don't like the internet and we're kind of a problem here with the internet for them. The other thing too is I think they really don't like any kind of genuine spiritual practice that can develop somebody's ability to manifest their will, to be truly creative. That's something that they can't have people being able to take control of their life in a spiritual way like that. And I think that's why a lot of why these spiritual groups get infiltrated and why there are these people who come along and take over organizations and turn them into something render them totally ineffective. But so I think just like what Thomas was saying with the media, them having a trouble with us over here on YouTube, another thing that they've got a problem with is the occult and real spiritual practices that can actually help people develop themselves for their self, because they want to make sure that everyone has some kind of external savior, whether that's the media or a god or something. They want to ensure that people don't have control of their own spiritual destiny. Well,
I just find it interesting. At the same time Tina was pointing her arse at us, the cat was jumping in front of the screen.
Yeah, he was. He saw my mouse cursor on the screen.
It's not a complaint, Tina, by the way. It's not
Monster strikes again.
It looks like the little cat wanted to see. I want to see Tina's bum.
Censored me.
Oh, here he comes again. Oh.
But here,
you'll see the video later. It gets really cute, actually. The minute you bent over, he jumps up on the screen. Have a look.
Yeah, but I don't know how many. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, has anybody else noticed that the passage of information seems to have turned up over the last little while? The amount of information that's coming at us, that's being created. It's almost like it's on fast forward.
I could answer that, yeah. So I like to think, I was thinking about this a few weeks ago, actually, when I was with some good friends of mine, honestly. And, for the people in my life, I'm very fortunate to have them. But a concept came to my mind of how how this social engineering order or orders set across the world could ever go and hope to operate now, because a lot of what they were doing was supposed to be considered a occultic or secret science, which is to say they had to keep it secret, so that way you couldn't go and reverse engineer something to go against it. And now that we have the internet, we have a lot of people who can do that in regards to all sorts of information, whether it's going to be news or whether it's going to be, current affairs or entertainment. And definitely, different kinds of economic systems as well. And just one word came to my mind, velocity. So there is a group of people, there's a set groups all across the world of different people, I would say, who are operating at such a fast velocity in comparison to the larger apparatus of the mainstream that they simply can't keep up with it. And that's an interesting point that you said that it's all moving faster now, because one of the things that you're all thinking about, like Thomas, you mentioned how in the BBC and Savile and everything like that's just its own thing, and they have their own little documentary they want to go and do about it now. It's Steve Coogan playing the dude. Oh, that's a terrible idea, but it's cascading. The effect is all coming down. The glamour is falling apart, and all of these organizations are actually falling apart as well, like CNN. And one of these big things, this big story that came out in CNN was a CNN producer was approached parents to go and get access to their kids, essentially. And now it's come out now, national file, that there's been another one that's come forward and was exposed. And that information was given over to Project Veritas over in the States. They just can't keep up with it all. And
they got their channel taken down over it.
Yeah, but then they actually have to get looked at and get it investigated and everything. And that active investigation actually goes and proves that what they were saying was legit. And there was the same thing going on with that strange little diary from Hunter Biden's daughter. It's all just coming apart for them, and they can't control it. So they're just hoping that they can take control of this internet apparatus fast enough to go and shut it all down. But, they can try to go and control the whole system, but people are just going to find a way to crack it again.
Yeah, to add on that, Carl, what you're saying, I think humor plays a huge part in it. Like memes, for instance, on every major news page, on Facebook, you cannot post memes. You cannot post any pictures.
Yeah, they can't take any pictures.
Because they can't why that is, because humor takes you right out of that dark spell that they want to spin on you.
Exactly. Yeah. And entertainment's going the same way as well. Like they want to go and get into all these different franchises that want to get away from, the seriousness of the real world. And they want to go and bring in real world stuff to it again. And, they have a few people, as far as the media is concerned, it's already decided, but people don't care. They're just going to make their own games. That's the nature of some of these entertainment outlets as well. You make your own adventure, Yeah,
we have a kind of a folk media now. That's what I would call this, the folk media.
Oh, yeah. And it's amazing, honestly.
So it's like us versus Meta.
You could say that, yeah. But in that sense, we're kind of already winning as well, because, we're not just stuck on one platform. We can go to several. You can stream something, sure, on YouTube or Twitch. And then when that's all said and done, go and have a backup of it, put it for Odyssey or Dailymotion, just keep a good old bank of them somewhere on a hard drive. You're sorted, People have their little communities that they flock to, and that's just indie entertainment in a nutshell. It's great.
Yeah, all genuine creativity comes out of like the kind of small folk movements, the genuine kind of roots kind of things, doesn't it? Only becomes a commodity whenever the establishment gets behind it and markets it and sells it to people.
Well, you look at 313 and Jason's music, I think is a fantastic example of that. How he could hawk around for years trying to get work off Hollywood people and no one ever hearing his music. Well, now he makes music for the documentaries and sounds for the documentaries and films. And thousands and thousands and thousands of people are hearing his art and his creativity, rather than waiting around for the demo tape to come back from Sony Classics or whatever to say, oh, we really like this. And see, that's a classic example of how the folk media is fantastic.
And when you look at the mainstream media as well now, last night, for the first time in a long time, allowed myself to drift when episodes of Family Guy and American Dad had ended on TV. I allowed myself to drift off to the BBC. And what a fucking sad shit show that was, of people who knew that their entire existence was fucking going down the drain. And the presenters were quite young, you know, like young enough to be my kids or whatever. And you could just see it was just, this is a fucking, this is over. This over. It's just a matter of time. But there they were with like, you know, blah, 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 you know, cases and surgery and all this other fucking bullshit. You're just thinking, you've committed yourselves to a lie.
Yeah, and they know it.
And you know what's interesting with that is even like what Carl was saying, that there's a tremendous amount of, I think a few of you were saying it, that there's a tremendous amount of information just coming out right now. It seems like also what's going on with that is there's a tremendous amount of that's fluff and noise, and it's almost as if social media and a lot of these the platforms have filled up with a lot of really noisy content that seems to be kind of like maybe created by the establishment or created by content creators who are funded by the CCP or funded by some organization. And at that point, that seems to be what always happens when these groups get infiltrated by plants. They come along and do like a near perfect duplicate of whatever the spiritual practice is or whatever their art is, but strip out the essence of it and make a kind of mainstream version of that thing that gets pushed out. And I think that kind of tends to be what happens, like what Thomas was talking about, these kind of reset societies that occur every century or so. It's like if there was a legitimate bona fide spiritual or magical practice, that group got infiltrated and its information got copied and then released again, but with the essence, with the guts, you know, the heart stripped out of it. And you know, the original people who created those practices are done away with, or they're suppressed somehow. And I think we're starting to see that too with with some of the kind of, if you want to say the occult people out there on YouTube and on social media. There's just a lot of noise going on. I'm trying to remember what the name of some of these people are, and I probably won't name any of them. But it's just like there's some Say again?
I can name a few.
Yeah, I'm just not.
But I don't want to get hounded by their followers. So.
Right.
Look, here's the thing, right? I'm old enough to remember when the internet first started, and I was reading magazines like Wired and all this stuff back in the day. And I was working in that kind of, in and around the field. It was, you know, I was in graphic design and communication. So what was coming down the road in the internet was very interesting to us where we worked. And so I'd read Wired magazine and all these. So that was like a lot of computer magazines back then. And I used to read like hackers magazines and fanzines and stuff like that. And the whole thing the mainstream had for the internet was this was like cyber surfing, dude. And they'd have a picture, you know, like guys with like these kinds of glasses with sunshades on them. And there was a whole digital noise all around them. And it was a whole new future of we were all going to be absorbed into the digital world of a new future where everything was new. Well, look at the internet now. What's the biggest fucking things on the internet? Organic gardening, traditional cooking, Viking and runes and all that stuff, ancient mythology, ancient religion, ancient organic healing. Everything that they thought was going to be wiped out actually owns the internet now. And I noticed that people, especially about runes,
that say the most bullshit things. As in, like, you can never tattoo a rune on you. It is the worst magic you can do with runes. Are you fucking kidding me? I mean, I have so much to say about this subject that I think I'm going to hijack this conversation.
Go on, Tina. Go on, Tina. Do it.
You made one of the greatest videos in the history of the internet. And I watch it every now and again to just howl laughing. It was the one you called Magical Karens.
Oh. Yeah. But they are like that, aren't they? They come into any group. They always preach. They never have anything interesting to say. Whatever they say is something you can read in any Wicca book out there, and it's all bullshit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, my analysis of kind of pagan theology is if you hear the word commandment, then it's not pagan, because we don't do commandments in paganism. If it's got commandments, it's Abrahamic. Like last night in Wicklow,
no books. We're not people of the book.
That's right. We're not people of the book. Last night in Wicklow, it was a full moon, and I stepped out of the cottage. I'd gone down early in the morning just to have a rest and to get away. And I stepped out and the sky was clear and there was a beautiful full moon over the mountains. And I said, glory be. I absolutely said, I looked up at it for about a minute and I videoed a little bit of it and I said, glory be. And that's where we are religiously. And it's not about books. It's not about rules or that kind of thing. It's about that. It's about what happened to me last night. No.
It's about what happens internally, the hero's journey, right?
Yeah. It's funny, thinking back what Greg was saying earlier on. Today, this Sunday is usually my worst day of the year because I have to I have to dismantle a huge thing at a place where I work. And it's always extremely stressful, painful, difficult, annoying, goes wrong. I nearly end up having a fist fight with somebody. It always goes bad. Today, it went like an absolute dream. There wasn't one hit. In the 7 years I've been doing it, it went with an absolute dream. Coming back home in the still of the night, the roads were well behaved. There was no idiots on the roads. The night was lovely and calm and gentle. And that's how I feel right now. So maybe there is a kind of a temperament thing happening to us now. But I woke up this morning, was so tense. Today is the worst day of the year. I have to face it. And it was absolutely a doddle.
Now I just want to go out for a walk in the night, you know. It's got a little park local to me. I think I'll go and have a mug with me, you know. Have a good walk with that. It'll be a good time for it as well, because I usually get a nice view of the moon when it's out. So
where do you live?
You know, I'm South Dublin, you know. I'm in that one Tala, you know.
Oh, okay.
But no one's going to bother me tonight because all the kids still have their programming of, you know, it's school tomorrow morning, despite the fact that there's probably not school tomorrow morning, you know.
You know, Tala has the great honor of being mentioned in the Lovecraft story.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. Rats in the Walls, I remember that one. It was a good one.
No, not the Rats in the Wall, the Moonbog.
Oh, the Moonbog.
Yeah.
Oh, gods, yeah. That was a while back. Still have that book somewhere. I should go dig it out again, have a flick through. I like Mountains and Madness more than that else, really. But yeah, there's a lot of the old grimdark stuff I saw throughout all the different fandoms, like 40k and everything like that. And you know, that's doing its own thing now. You know, the company's bloody terrible, but you know, those themes have always stuck with me an awful lot. You know, and I don't know. I think entertainment is sort of is getting into a sort of a new vogue. And can
I ask you what neighborhood you live in Tala?
No, we can't go give that away.
Okay. Do you live in Springfield?
No, but that's about, say, half hour away.
Have you ever heard whatever happened that neighborhood back in the 80s?
Go on. I'm a little bit curious about this.
My brother lives in Tala.
Yeah.
He lives in the neighborhood right next to Shamrock Rovers Stadium.
Oh, I know that one. Yeah.
Right, and then is that called Feathercairn? I don't remember. But on the top of the hill is Springfield. It's basically on the hill at the bottom of the mountains. And I lived out there in Shobstown for a short time in the early 80s. And I hated every fucking second ever.
Job sounds like that, yeah.
Well, I hated Tala in general, but that's my fault. Yeah. I grew up in Ballymun, so moving to Tala to me was like moving to, fucking Swiss Family Robinson. It was like I hated it. There was nothing to do from my age and everything. But anyway, I digress. But there was people who used to live in Springfield, and that whole neighborhood had the most amazing paranormal events in the early 80s. I don't know if you ever heard about this, but like people abandoned their houses and everything. There was huge poltergeist activity. There were people being possessed. There was people hearing screamings and howlings in the middle of the night. And it turned out, and it's still there, in the middle of that neighborhood is a small kind of grass area. And there was a stone circle on that was kind of vanished years ago and buried under the ground. But they built all the houses along where a bunch of court cairns and other megaliths were built. And also the alleged witch's house was up there. And there was a book I have by a guy called Malachi McSomething, and it's not even a paranormal. It's about the history of those mountains before they were developed and became a town. And he talked about certain towns and certain roads you didn't go up on at night because they were inhabited by the fairies and all this stuff, and they were dangerous.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and Springfield was one of them, where the farm where Springfield was one of them. And I can remember very clearly people at the bus stop with women saying, I can't live in this house anymore. The kids are waking up and seeing people in the middle of the night walking through the house and things like that. And there was all poltergeist activity, and it was all in this one neighborhood, Springfield.
Yeah, I heard something similar as well. This is in another estate down south, further south of Springfield, in that direction, called Kilnarden.
Sorry, maybe you're right. It was Kilnarden. I'm sorry, it was Kilnarden.
Oh, well, that's not very far at all, actually.
They're both next to each other on the mountain, but I think Kilnarden is higher.
Kilnarden is higher. It's closer towards the Wicklow Hills.
Okay, the one up and higher on the mountain is Kilnarden. Bottom of Springfield. I'm getting the two mixed. Yeah, but the Springfield one is where the stone circle is buried under the park. Kilnarden, that's what the one. Sorry, I got mistaken there.
Yeah, well, there's quite a few interesting little spots up around by Tala, but I just can't help but think of the patterns, like you were saying, every 100 years or so. Okay, well, here's an interesting little one. Okay, I studied a little bit for a project. Okay, and I was putting together a story about how they wanted to build a visitor center up around near the Hellfire Club, Montpelier Hill. Yeah. Okay, to make the same sin again, of course, they wanted to sink 15 million into this little project, a vanity project. Okay, learning absolutely nothing about the situation.
Interpretive center, yeah,
it's terrible. It's a terrible idea.
The case is this: you want to throw money against those things that keep happening, and they keep happening in the same places, and it's always the same solution in their eyes to just keep throwing money, and it never works. Ever.
Oh yeah.
That's the difference between them and us. We learn from our mistakes, but not them.
No, and it pulls ancient forces from the earth up, and that place with that Carl is talking about, it's full of megaliths and ancient forces, and it's been everybody from property developers to governments have wanted to get their hands on it because it's very beautiful, the mountains around there, but it's like the ancient forces in the land have always rejected them.
Yeah. Pretty much. It's something to do with their attitudes, and honestly, they think they can be overseers of the entire area and have the attitudes of the Freemasonic rejects who took it up after Montpelier or Speaker Connolly himself passed away, and they were the worst people that you could imagine. The kind of like the Hunter Bidens of their time. But
I think, when I think that those people say that you can be master of your own life, I think they mean not just their life, everybody's life. And that's the huge mistake they're making, isn't it?
All the time. They want to go and have this psychological impression upon the local population. But, of course, the attitudes and the behaviors of everyone who were in the Hellfire Club at that time. Now I'm living in Tala, and I'm seeing a lot of people who have drug and alcohol problems. The same kinds of excesses of living coming to them. So they're taking up after the patterns of their masters and such. Which is just a shame, but people are just sort of sleepwalking most of the time throughout life here, when otherwise they want to get away from it and they don't know how. But they just want to go and repeat it again.
That is the same. I think, in my opinion, that is the same reason why mainstream media is falling down, because people keep hearing the same bullshit. They listen to the same people having the same opinions, agreeing with the same people. The people with the same opinions. How many times can you hear the same thing? Having it make you feel depressed and low and bad about yourself and not change something.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think I want to go and get into contact with a few people, and for in bulk, just go and get a bunch of people from Tala and people from the traveller community as well, just to go up to the top of the Hellfire Club and have a little celebration of the fire festival.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a megalith. The gigantic megalith is built underneath that. It's two of them. Two massive Newgrange type mounds are buried underneath. That's what they built. That's what they built the thing from. The stones from that.
Yeah, one of them at least. But this is also a very strange thing. I was up there in the summer, And I went into the building itself. I went up with a friend, okay? And I found something interesting and odd. There was this damp stone, just one damp stone in the place, okay? They're everywhere else is dry. It was one of those days. So then I was just like, okay, that's odd. All right, so then I walked out. I'm going back down the hill in the darkness with my friend. And after a point, we stopped because I noticed this weird sheen on the ground. Now, this is a beautiful summer's day. You know, you get roasted in the daytime. You couldn't bring your dogs out to go for a walk because they'd get dehydrated and keel over or something. But yeah, just this strange wet slick on the path down, and from the same sort of trajectory as if, you know, like south to south. You know, it was an odd one, but it was Yeah, I just found it on the road out in this particular little spot. Everywhere else was dry around it. So it's like there's a kind of a water swell underneath the actual building, underneath the stone, underneath the structures, somewhere in the mountain itself. And this water swell was sort of like acting up, or I don't know, maybe someone was doing a bit of farming and decided to dump all their water into the spot. That's one of the other possibilities of it. I just thought it was very strange though, and I don't know. I think we're getting very conscious of the idea that, like, okay, we have a bit of an addiction problem in Tala, so let's go sort that out.
Actually, that reminds me of a movie, that movie Merlin. Oh, it's a very long movie, 2 hours. You can actually watch it for free on YouTube, but there is a significant line in that movie that always stuck with me. You cannot build on water.
For people currently watching, you can find out about the Hellfire Club on Beyond Room 313 on the Occult Dublin documentary. Quick ad. It's featured in that film.
Yeah. Handy one as well. Yeah. But yeah, you go out around the back of that building and you go into the forest beyond the back of that. It's a whole field of clovers in between the trees. It looks beautiful in the summer. So
I used to camp in those woods as a teenager, and they were dangerous because there were serial killers and everything up there. And Massey's Wood, and it's just amazing how many megaliths are buried in those areas. You wonder how many cities have built on top of megaliths and destroyed them, you know. And if the problems in certain neighborhoods are caused by that, if Killinarden is anything to go by, it's definitely true.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
What does Killinarden mean? It means Killen Ardoin. I mean, it's a church of some. I'm not sure what an Ardoin means.
An Ardoin, yeah. Well, there's an Ardoin in Northern Ireland.
Sorry, what was the name again?
Killinarden.
Arden is town. No, Arden, yeah, it's the town church. That's basically what it means.
Right. Of what town?
I don't know, Dan.
And then by the way, Carl, that was very interesting to listen to. Thank you. That was really
yeah. Well, you know, 15 million going towards this visitor centre, about less than $1 million going towards the Tala Alcohol, Drugs and Task Force. You know, I mean, like, we've got skewed priorities here, and that's just easily observable stuff. That would get me a distinction in college, so I'm happy with that.
I don't think they want to solve those problems, Carl. If those problems exist and there is money to solve them, and the reason that money is not going towards the solution to those problems is because that problem is meant to be there.
Yes, right. Absolutely, 100%. I saw that in Ballymun. They wanted everybody to be on a smack. They were shipping it in deliberately, just like they shipped crack into the poor neighborhoods in America.
Yeah, and it's like they're doing with heroin here in the Pacific Northwest.
And meth down to the poor of the South.
Yep.
Well, I remember in my final job as a secondary teacher, there was a young fellow who got into trouble for a fare evasion on the Dart. And for some reason, he came to me to see, you know, him and a few other lads came to me to see, could I sort it out for him? Well, I said to him, have you got previous? And he said, what do you mean by previous? I said, you know what I mean? Well, he said, I have a conviction for drugs. What type of drugs? Cannabis. Ah, well, then I said, you played their game. I said, because a cannabis conviction is just enough for the guards to blacklist you without you being a big player. I said, but sure, hey, you took on the man, didn't you? You know, I said, or is it a case that they want you to take up this shit so that they can watch you, that they can criminalize you, they can blacklist you? Not for, you know, cannabis allows them to blacklist you, but not very badly blacklist you, but just enough to make your life shite, you know? And that's how it works. They want you to take this shit, I said to him. I said, if you want to show people that you're standing up to the man, don't drink, don't do drugs. I said, if you smoke cigarettes, that's not illegal, but I said, you stay out of trouble by giving it to the man. That's how you do it. No, I said, no. You're a cool dude. You did fare evasion. And I said, you've got previous for something related to fucking cannabis.
And there's another thing. No one I know who was a junkie or a cokehead or anything had any problem procuring drugs during the lockdown. It was business as usual. The cops stood off and allowed the drug trade to continue.
Yeah, with all the checkpoints, they could have caught them as well.
Yep.
There's something real interesting with that here in the state of Washington that, as you mentioned, Thomas, the police having their hands off things. It's gotten to the point now where if the police are called to any sort of dispute, they can't interfere now because it could be considered a mental health crisis. So they have to wait for some sort of mental health professional to come in to de-escalate a situation. So it's kind of like there's crackheads, tweakers that live next door here to the house, and we've called the police on them, we've called the fire department on, and there's essentially nothing that can be done when something's going down. So it's kind of been part of that thing with the
that's a very handy excuse, isn't it, not to do nothing?
Right. Yeah. So
I tell you what would happen here in Italy, Jason.
Yeah.
That no police would be called whatsoever. People would go there with dogs and baseball bats and make sure.
Yeah. Right. Take the law into your own hands. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's getting real weird here. And then the thing, like you guys were talking about living out in the woods, it's like in California they just banned generators, any kind of
crazy.
Yeah. That's
and
absurd.
certain like gas lawnmowers and stuff like that. So I think it's only a matter of time until Oregon and Washington here follow suit with something like that. And it's like those fucking lawnmowers that are like battery operated and stuff, and people out there with garden tools with like electrical cords and stuff. That's so fucking dangerous out there with like a plug-in lawnmower or a plug-in weed eater or something trying to do
what type of generator did they ban? Did they ban those smaller kind of petrol-y, diesel generators you can use portably, or did they ban wire-in, hardwired?
They were portable ones they banned.
Yeah. And I think it has to do with the type of motor. So it's not just the generators; it's also like the two-stroke and four-stroke engines for certain garden tools and
just make it up as they go along.
A friend on my Facebook list lives in Phoenix, in Arizona. Apparently, it's the best place in the world to try clothes on the line because you have a breeze and you have sunshine, and you put all the clothes on the line and they're literally dried in like 5 minutes. Well, the city of Phoenix has banned all clotheslines, and everyone said is these are the same politicians who talk about fighting global warming have passed laws to make sure that everyone has a gas or an electric powered tumble dryer in their basement when they could actually dry their clothes for free on the line.
But if you hang your clothes on the line, what would they actually do? I mean, they would fine you, obviously. But if you have no money to buy a laundromat, I mean, you cannot skin a stone. What they're going to do? Put you in prison? They won't put you in prison. Prisons are overcrowded.
Yeah, but what they do is they find them. They will actually, and then there's shame, the suburban neighborhood shame. The police are coming around issuing tickets and stuff like that. There's a lot of that kind of thing plays into it. Sort of suburban decarrence, suburban shame.
Huh.
I'm not taking shame.
I can't wrap my head around that at all.
Yeah, no, it's amazing, isn't it? They have the best. Well, I lived in America, and a lot of people said that, and this is an interesting one, that they used to. You'll like this, Tina. They used to associate laundry clothes on the line with poor peasants from Europe who had emigrated to America. And when
well, you know what? Yes, I am a poor peasant. Is that something to be proud of? Something to be ashamed about?
That's why I'm mentioning it, because I'm the same. And I was told that like a big part of moving on up in America was to not like in the immigrant neighborhoods, the poor Irish, the Italians, the Jews, the Hungarians, whatever, the Portuguese, would hang all their clothes out to dry on the street and between the tenement apartments. I mean, that was quite common. I mean, Dublin was like that. You still see that in neighborhoods around Europe. You don't see in Dublin so much now. But, the people would hang the clothes out in the street in front of everyone. Your knickers would be blowing in the wind and no one cared. And in America,
everybody's sneakers are blowing out here on the streets.
I know.
If anybody would say something about that to me, they can tell me to my face, so I can tell them to their face that I don't give a fuck.
Southern Europe is better. When I was in Lisbon, it was refreshing to see in the city that the old ladies still hang their bloomers out of the apartment windows and stuff like that. But in America, that was seen as a rite of passage. You became an American when you no longer hung your clothes on the line to try. It meant you were now an American. Serious, that was part of the culture. And if you see like American films, like when they want to show the poor immigrants, there's always clothes on the line being dried between the tenement buildings. Even The Simpsons shows that. Like they show the origin of the Simpsons family, and they're in like some neighborhood, the Lower East Side, and the first thing you see are all the clothes waving in the wind, and Mrs. O'Reilly next door and Mrs. Sabatino across the way. They're peasants. They haven't become Americans yet.
I genuinely don't understand what's so bad about being regarded as a poor immigrant. I'm a poor immigrant in Italy, within Europe even. If I am poor in my home country, I'm going to be poor no matter where I go.
I mean, it's the whole savior thing again, that idea of whether it's a political savior or a religious savior. It's that concept of coming in and accepting some sort of laws and everything that it means to make you an American citizen as some sort of savior from where you were before. And there's just so much social engineering here in the U.S. to ensure that you conform. And we were watching the videos of all the Australians singing about the you can take your vaccine mandate and shove it up your ass song. And it's like, I was thinking you'd never see Americans doing something like that, because everybody here is so concerned with being conformist. There's like this unspoken thing. I mean, I know a lot of Americans. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I can be an unhappy conformist in the USA. Well, I can be a happy unconformist anywhere. Right.
Yeah. So it's weird. It's just like, we all know that a lot of Americans consider themselves to be Christian. And even if they're not Christian, they've got the Abrahamic mindset as a woke person. The whole woke thing is just Christianity 3.0 or something, or, it's one of those type of things. But yeah, it's just this conformist thing. So the thing about the American dream and all of that is just a new version of salvation kind of thing.
In essence.
Salvation from what exactly?
From having to own your own shit,
like
I think.
With there's a concept of original sin, whatever that happened to be, whatever flavor it is, whether it's original sin in Christianity, or like Thomas was just saying, you coming to the United States and having a rite of passage where you're an American now, and your roots as a European being somehow looked down upon, to see that, okay,
the old world. I always found that.
Okay, but the old world, you look down upon me because I'm from the old world.
No,
but there are
I'm not, Tina, I'm not looking down on you. No,
too.
I'm just saying how it is here. No, I'm not looking down on you. I'm talking.
No, not you, Jason. Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? Here in Europe, there are people looking down on me too. So why I would go to the US to have other people look down on me?
Right. Yeah, and I mean, again, this is something that this was our grandparents' generation, or maybe great grandparents, and now it's 3-4 generations in, and it's become such an unconscious thing that's there. Nobody speaks of it, but it's a thing. Maybe when people were growing up in the 1930s, 1940s in the U.S., it might have been a spoken thing, but it's an unspoken thing now, because all those people are our grandparents and great grandparents at this point. Hmm. And so the newest version of it, the 3.0 version of it, is wokeism, and making sure that when you're on social media, you've got your you're using the right terminology, sharing stuff from the correct news sources and everything. So it's just Abrahamism dressed up with different vernacular, and original sin, whatever version of it you want to give, and then salvation from that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And what Greg was saying earlier on about when he said about conservative, doesn't mean necessarily conservative political. Yeah. Orthodoxy. That's the word, like the orthodoxy. And the orthodoxy right now is woke.
Yep. And the woke are incredibly conservative in nature. They've gone so far left that they're far right. They're
puritanical.
Yeah, puritanical. Exactly. The left is so fucking or the far left, I should say. And
that's where all the sexual mutilations are coming from. That's right back to the flagellants of the early Christianity and the Stylites and all these other groups that used to castrate themselves.
Yep. And they call themselves whatever, bisexual, something sexual, and it has nothing to do with sexuality to them. It's like sex again has become one of those things that's, you can't speak about it. You can't have it. They cut off their genitals and stuff and have these asexual relationships with people. It's really weird. It's really weird how non-sexual a lot of these alphabet crew people are.
Yeah.
Is that the term we're using, alphabet crew?
Something funny about that recently. He said that putting the rainbow flag in your bio is sort of like a defensive magic. They will leave you alone, and you can say whatever shit you like in the meanwhile.
Yeah, it's a symbol of mediocrity as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, it is, isn't it? It is. Did you notice maybe during the week, some of you noticed that a woman called Bell Hooks, I don't know what her real name was, Bell Hooks died. Now, Bell Hooks, there was an article about it in the Irish Times or the London Times about Bell Hooks, who died, and she was an author. And, they made her out in the obit to be kind of like the color purple, or, the woman who wouldn't get out of the seat in the bus in Birmingham, Alabama. And I looked closer at her, and she was one of the first of the genuine hardcore cultural Marxist academics.
Yeah.
So she was Black, yes, and she traded on that. She was she was the kind of Ibn Joseph version 0. She looked closer at her. She was from a middle-class Black background and went and got 3 university degrees and made an entire living out of this whole crap, out of all of this divisive, gaslighting crap. And then I read some of Bell Hooks's quotes, and Bell Hooks's quotes were things you wouldn't put in the toilet. On a little hooky of, live, laugh, and be free, or it's wine o'clock. It was fucking somewhere below that in terms of its intellect and depth.
All mark cards.
Yeah. And this is just one of these. She was the first of the classical RTE type cultural Marxist woke academics, and they're all talking about her like she, but she was the first of that bunch who have now really gone so rancid and are all over RTE and The Guardian these days. And I looked through it, I said, she's just an academic. Whatever about this Black hero growing up. So she wasn't. She was an academic, and she did 3 degrees and got tenured in university in the 70s, and that was the end of it. And the way that they, they curate it and doll it up, and then you look at it and she was just an academic. But she died, Bell Hooks, her name was.
So many African-American heroes who played in the kind of victim thing grew up in incredible wealth.
Yes.
Miles Davis was one, the jazz trumpeter. He came up from a very wealthy family. And there was loads of others. The Ice-T, you know that rapper? He came from like money and stuff like that. And here they are like going on like they're from the hood and they were from in the ghetto and they were impoverished. So there's Joe Strummers and that's that world as well.
Yeah. I got a little something I want to say about Bell Hooks. I knew someone from a little bit of internet culture war history a few years ago, actually, who caused a lot of crap as a result of her of being a student of Bell Hooks's writings and such. Now, besides one thing that I was reminded about, and that was Bell Hooks took a lot from Christianity, actually. A lot of her mindset had that. But one of the other things was she influenced this character called Sarkeesian, okay? And Sarkeesian was a complete grifter. So, how the Christians went after all this geeky stuff in the 80s with Dungeons and Dragons and the like, okay? And they claimed that it was a gateway to Satanism and everything. Now, she just did that again, except she applied sexism instead of Satanism. And then it sort of was caught on from there. This began the whole movement in terms of communication. Gamergate and such. Yeah, that's something that terrorizes all the inferior journalists of nowadays. Actually, they never let that go, and everyone who's in that movement, they've moved on as well. But the person who was a big proponent of Bell Hooks's writings, Sarkeesian, well, she dropped off the face of the earth after a few years, and after she got her work discredited by people who are able to combat against her and actually utilize.
Exactly, and the person she combated against the most, which is Sargon of Akkad, now has a very successful YouTube channel.
Yeah, and a family, and co-workers and everything. Great guy. I love his work. That's a standard for me personally. But Sargon did a great job on just like debunking all of her crap, but he managed to go and get his own thing going, and he held to his own standards, even if like not necessarily everyone of that movement was able to. But yeah, I'm sort of seeing like the staccato effect, and people are still sort of caught on this woke stuff, and it got applied to everywhere in entertainment as well. To tie it back to Dungeons and Dragons, the people who own it now, Wizards of the Coast, they sort of like they tie in a little bit of this Abrahamic logic by creating these these races called the tieflings, which are sort of like related to devils and such through their bloodlines, through some magical influence in their bloodlines, and the opposite to that with the celestials as well, and affecting humans, called the Asimar. But the way I contextualize that in my mind, they always had this kind of American twang to their accents, you know? That's how I characterize them. But yeah, like all the people who are currently within geek culture, they really want it to remain that way. Is it like everything that Sarkeesian said was right, but people just don't care. They don't care, don't matter, don't mind whatever else the media surrounding that will go and say. Even the companies themselves would go and say. Just people are just making their own stories and having fun with it that way because they don't like the woke crap, you know? And the son of Gary Gygax himself is coming back with TSR Games, and they're currently in a little bit of legal, well, as I should say, there's a bit of a dispute going on for a lot of IPs. It's going to be very interesting.
You're going to like this one then, Carl. The new season of The Witcher, for instance. The first one was the wokest shit you could imagine. It was just terrible. And that was the major criticism they had about the series. Just cut out the woke shit. The story is dark. It is brutal. It is not family-friendly or child-friendly at all. It is a very dark story. And the wokest of producers that produced that show, season 2, well, she actually listened.
Oh, yeah?
I was surprised about that. It's much better.
Interesting.
To see what happens with this Lord of the Rings stuff that's coming up. This new Tolkien series on Amazon. Yeah. I mean, from what you know, I don't know what to believe yet. Some people say it's the wokest fucking thing you could ever imagine. And when you hear that Lenny Henry is being cast as a hobbit, it does make you wonder. But we'll see. I wonder what happened, like Tina said about that show. The first season, it might be woke and collapse. And then the second season, they return to like the actual traditional format.
Well, in the first season, they were looking for, you know, this blonde girl in the story. In all the stories, she's blonde. She's very pale. She's described as that. Yeah. And then the producer of the show puts out a tweet, we're looking for maybe a black actress. And the backlash was just everybody saying like, well, then I'm not going to watch it. I'm just not going to watch it. I don't care.
And a lot of backlash will come from black people too. If you even go to a lot of the videos attacking Lovecraft, and look, you'll see a lot of black guys say there, yeah, I know he was like that. Yeah, I know that's what it means, but I don't care. There's still fantastic stories. And, you know, if Lovecraft didn't really particularly care for the Irish either, does that mean I'm going to not read his stories? Absolutely not. You know, it's like you have to analyze everything in terms of like, am I offended?
Carl, did you go to university? Because you've come out with some shit hot material tonight. You're on a roll.
Well, you know, I'm currently getting something right now, a little bit of a certification at the moment, and I'm going to move on to a degree next year and get that done. But I really just want to work within the spheres of the internet, but a little bit of freelance and the mainstream stuff as well. That's what I want to do, essentially. Journalism and content creation, you know?
You didn't go to uni.
Well, I tried one of the colleges, one of the bigger ones, but it didn't really pan out a few years ago. So now I'm just getting it done and finishing unfinished business, you know. And I didn't get converted either, so that's also a plus.
That is a plus. I mean, when I went to secondary school, going to university was just seen as you had to go to university. And I then got my place in acting school kind of in January of when I was in sixth year. And all the others were saying, you know, I was the only person in the year who didn't have to do the leaving cert. I had my college place. They all said, you got your college place for nothing. I said, do you remember those 3 days when I was absent doing a singing, dancing and improvisation audition? Remember that, you fucking idiots. But then I went to university myself and as a night degree in UCD. And then I trained as a secondary teacher and did 2 master's degrees. And nowadays, I wouldn't see myself lasting 5 minutes in a university, because if I was up against bell hooks, I mean, just it would be... No, it just...
You couldn't stop yourself from swearing at her, yeah, that kind of thing.
That too. I mean, I could just talk to her about the intersectionality of gay porn, and it would decline very quickly from there, you know. But one of the things that was happening when I was finishing my third degree was the wokeness was really beginning to turn cancerous in universities, and I got out of the. It wouldn't be for me now, you know. It wouldn't be for me now.
I don't even know what intersectionality means.
It's like all the different forms of oppression go and connect together somehow. It's crap.
One of the problems is that these academics get treated like gods. And I was never willing to do that in uni. Never for one moment in university was I willing to treat any academic as somebody who did not deserve at least to be questioned courteously but rigorously on the propositions they were coming out with. So if you look, for example, at Ibn Joseph, who just she's the uncrowned Queen of Ireland as far as Montrose are concerned. And it's not discourteous to ask a person who makes a proposition to justify it. That's not a personal attack. That's just asking them to justify what they have claimed or said. And that's, for me, that's an essential feature of university, that a person who gets up and gives a lecture says something, you then might ask them to explore a point that they've already made. No, that has now gone. And therefore, we have the likes of Ibn Joseph, who's a total chancer, like Bell Hooks, an absolute goddamn chancer, Ibn Joseph is. And she just gets a total free pass everywhere. And this is it's part of the pathology, isn't it?
Yeah, but I got something on her as well. That's just immediately
coming to head. Let's hear. Quick.
Easy, very much. Okay, Dr. Ibn Joseph, and for the rest of the tribe who want to listen. One of the things that's really struck me about the idea of impoverished areas is that they're all sort of stuck in council estates and such. So there's a lifestyle that comes with that. There's crime that targets those areas as well. And we notice by the basis of system, by the basis of setting up a location. But when it comes to people who are coming in and out of direct provision, they all get shepherded around. They're not really given much of a chance to go and move up or anything like that. You know, we are not forthright with the idea of, bring around your legal status, your legal papers and such. That's just for immigration. But for all the talk of like trying to go and be for, equality and such, why is it then that she's done absolutely nothing for the lads up on the north side of Dublin? Why is it that she's not talked about any of those communities and the people who would probably need a bit of guidance, a bit of integration, a bit of social direction?
Competition.
They're black men. They're black young lads. That's why. Because this is all it. Competition, but on top of that, you don't want to actually fix a problem. You don't want to actually solve a problem. You just want to keep it going so that you can getting that capital. Like that Dr. Cullors over in the United States, in fact, who was a big proponent of Black Lives Matter, self-avowed Marxist, and conned everyone out of their goddamn money to buy 4 mansions. 4 mansions. There you go, Ibn Joseph. You can put that on record.
Well, somebody on Twitter said that she's part of the academic professional grievance industry. That's what it is. It's a grievance industry. And if their problems they were getting at were solved, then they and their pals in the NGOs and their link into RTE would collapse. But guess what? Plot spoiler, it's collapsing already.
There you go.
And of course it's collapsing because you cannot replace academics and genuine knowledge and genuine free thinking with victim Olympics.
Exactly.
Here's an aside. If you want to go to university now and do something that's genuinely empirical and genuinely open to critical thought, do law, because there's only one law. Law is in many regards, it follows many scientific principles, and I found a lot of the people, I went to law school, I never passed the exams, but I found you'd meet some dead-on people in law school and interesting, broad-minded, justice-minded people in law school. There's a cliche that all the barristers and solicitors and judges are all kind of the establishment of the same page. Far from it.
Most of them don't ever reach the bar. Yeah.
Oh, I know barristers and solicitors who are very out of the box people. I did it in an Odyssey video a few nights ago. I said, don't tar them all with the same brush by any way or means. There's some practicing barristers and solicitors who are extremely broad-minded, decent, concerned, justice-minded people. And this is partly why, Fintan O'Toole got lacerated in the Irish Times last week, because those kind of people aren't going to listen to him gaslight them about the issue of compulsion in medicine. They're not going to have that. That's not going to be let go unchallenged.
Oh, yeah.
It's good to know that.
Lawyers, I'm hoping to, and barristers, magistrates, there's a radio guest of mine who've had on a few times over the last year, James Tunney, and a guy who I've got deep respect for. And I'm hoping to bring him on to this forum, actually. I think he'd be a great addition to our conversation.
Yeah, that's certainly a thing. I know at least one legal-minded person, and they've had quite the interesting discussions and the interesting processions, seeing how all certain aspects of agenda pushing can really go and mess up law, or it's trying to, but they just no actual argumentation behind what they back.
I'll tell you the truth about what's happening in Ireland, and maybe I'm being a bit indiscreet and giving out a bit much here. There's a whole group of people who the system yet has not trespassed with. So while there are those people who are going to court, and there's that woman Peg Buttimer down in Bandon who's just caused trouble for herself, there's a whole load of people whose names you aren't seeing in the courts because, frankly, the lockdown and all of these things have not created enough disturbance in their lives for them to have a case to go to court. And the big thing that is being asked about this amorphous and hidden group of very educated people, many of whom would be practicing lawyers, the question is, when are the psychopaths going to cross that particular line where that group of people are going to be going into court? Because when they take the psychopaths into court, they'll rip them to bits. And that has not actually happened in 18 months. You know, there are the people who've gone to court. There's the people who've been prosecuted, like poor Margaret Buttimer. And John Waters has argued very rightly that in a system that wasn't sick, they wouldn't be trying to prosecute Margaret Buttimer. And that's correct. But then there's that other hidden group who are not hearing about. You only see them surface occasionally in the letters page of the Irish Times when they're taking on Fintan O'Toole's foul gaslighting. But that group hasn't been stepped on yet. They're the group you want to leave alone. And the question is, when are the psychopaths and the creeps, as John Waters calls them, you know, Varad creeping them, when are they going to step on their toes? Because when they do step on their toes, you'll know about it.
To be honest, Christian, I think they already did step on their toes, but these people abide their time. Don't act out of impulse. Don't act out of emotion. These people know this to a T.
That's right. Don't act out of impulse. And I mean, again, we talked on other platforms about the culture of instant gratification, but there are a lot of people out there who don't buy. And, you know, in one of our previous pubs, Greg talked about the church that people have planned to build and it would be finished long after they've died. And that's right. And so much of the modern 20th century culture has been based on instant gratification that you can forget that there's still a lot of people out there who are very clever and switched on, who are thinking in the long term and not just in the immediate.
Yeah, and we have a very foreshortened kind of view of history. I mean, the world in the last 200 years or so since the Industrial Revolution in kind of Western Europe, I mean, it's such a short kind of tiny segment of human history, the history of the planet, you know?
Yep. For sure. That's
big, long picture.
Yeah.
It's easy to be goaded. Emotions are very direct, and when they happen, you cannot deny them when they happen. So it's easy. It's something that can easily be preyed on. So I think that these people. Yeah, go on, Greg. Yeah.
Don't be goaded. I've never felt more powerful, and I've never seen more weakness than I've seen on that television. I've never felt fear and know that more weakness on there. It's transformational to think that way.
Of course it is, because to know your own weakness is to know yourself. And when you know yourself, you know yourself. You know whatever somebody throws at you, you know how you're going to react. So if they're expecting a reaction, don't give it.
Right. Do you remember, anybody remember a character in Viz, Roger Irrelevant?
Yeah.
And yeah, Roger Irrelevant is the stage that the Irish mainstream media are at now in the past 2 weeks. Varch, Drenga, that's when I switch on RTE or any of these platforms, the Sunday Independent, I just get Roger fucking Irrelevant out. That's what I hear when I switch on RTE, but it doesn't matter because I don't switch on RTE.
I get, you remember that character, Robert Pryor, Hopeless Liar.
Yes.
Aldridge Pryor.
Oh, that's
Aldridge
right. Aldridge Pryor.
Hopeless Liar. And he's a complete and total spoofer. And like that's when I switch on the news now, that's what I see. Aldridge Pryor, Hopeless Liar. He used to say things like, could you hold that from me? I just won the lotto and I'm going to get it. This kind of thing. He's like, well, you have no money. Well, it's the Irish lotto. It's the helicopter coming to collect me in 5 minutes. Like Viz is the most philosophical comic book ever created.
Oh, Viz is in a league of its own.
Yeah,
There's never been another Viz. Viz is different. It's very different.
And years ahead of its time when you see things like The Modern Parents. Here we are.
Absolutely, The Modern Parents is years ahead of its time. And the nonsense. The Modern Parents hit on the nonsense of those progressive ones, those woke ones. You know, how they would have sex in front of their children and say, now ask questions about this afterwards. That's serious shit that they're coming out with there. But Viz gets it in under the radar. So, no, they were very much ahead of their time, but particularly with the modern.
Still are. I mean, I picked up a copy recently and it was just as funny as it was back in its heyday.
It hasn't jumped the shark.
Yeah.
It's looking to be an interesting time in entertainment for the years to come, I'm telling you. I mean, even Western animation, for a long time, I was just concerned it was going to be nothing and absolutely nothing but crap from here on out. And, you know, some companies are going to keep on with that and they're just going to collapse. That's fine. But just a few months ago and in other things as well, I just happened to see an actual big one, you know, come out, something called Arcane. It was very amazing. And I saw something else recently, just last night, the one I told you about already, you know, from an indie crowd starting up their story again, you know. It's just, it's looking very promising.
Yeah.
You know?
Is Arcane good? Because I've saved it to watch later.
Yes.
I haven't watched it yet.
It's a tragedy, but it's a very enthralling tragedy.
Yes, there are no good people in that series, and those are the best stories. There are no good people. Everybody
and at the same time,
their own motivation, their own reasons for doing things, and all are relatable.
Yeah, exactly. There's no good people, and at the same time, there's no really any, you know, it's very hard to go and pin down and say, like, there's a strictly bad person as well. It sneaks up on you, but it can be so enthralling, and there's this idea of, like, this opposing dichotomy, and the tragedy is in the fact that it exists in the first place, I think, without giving anything away. Yeah, very, very good watch. Very good watch. Brilliant start to finish. Oh, great, strong character stuff.
Right, that's next on my watch list then.
Yeah, I've been recommending that to everybody.
It has all the woke shit in it, huh?
Yeah,
Arcane.
Yeah.
Series, it has every woke check mark that you can imagine, and it's still a very good story.
Because it doesn't
if you're
matter.
One of those people, yeah, it doesn't matter. Exactly. That's what I wanted to say. It doesn't matter if there are every 37 sexualities in there that the woke crowd want you to believe that exists. It doesn't matter. The story is good. And it's relatable. You can imagine yourself in the shoes of every protagonist and every antagonist until they all sort of mesh into the same.
Yeah, I don't think it's not even done yet. You know, I'm looking forward to it. You know, seeing what happens next. It's really, really something else. Yeah, but Japan is not disappointed either. So far, so good. You know, so they're doing something really nice as well. Big show about a bunch of lads in the, I think it's Taisho era, and it's called Demon Slayer. But yeah, the whole thing behind their whole thing comes down to a very esoteric principle of breeding techniques, and something about that show really clicked for me because, you know, an aspect of shamanism, if you will, comes down to activities and breeding techniques. So it's kind of like it marries the whole principles of like Japanese folklore in with these ancient practices to get a specific physical reaction. So I'm very, very, very much like that.
We wrap it up, Jason, in the next 2 minutes because I'm getting a bit tired.
Well,
that sounds good. This has been a good one today.
Before we wrap it up, though, I just want to give a preview.
I want to say, can everyone hang on after we've left? I want to tell you something.
Okay, right. But while we're still live, I put a video on Odyssey 2 days ago. It was only voiceover, which is probably just as well. I've been getting a lot of feedback on that video. So I've decided I'm going to do a longer version. It'll still be voiceover, don't worry. I'm going to, Tina's laughing. I can see Tina's laughing.
Of course I am. I heard the first one.
Yeah, I'm not going to do it here now because I don't want us to get a strike, but I'm going to do that again because there's been such a response to it that I think I'll...
Christian, I want to say something. If you ever make an OnlyFans, I will subscribe.
Yeah. If you're trying to organize or producing a Bluey, it's easier to organize producing the fucking Olympics than organizing to produce a Bluey. But I can always, when we were kids, we made our own entertainment, didn't we? So I'm going to do another Odyssey video, which will be following that theme that Tina liked and so many other people I can fucking tell you liked as well. And that'll probably be my next Odyssey to come around soon. And don't worry, there'll be lots of Foleying and good sound effects as well. So that's a little Christmas treat.
Yeah, I absolutely love your animations.
Thank you.
You found your groove. You found your groove with them. I'm telling you.
Do you know something? The best program for doing core and for doing the crude stuff is PowerPoint. PowerPoint is a brilliant program it's very seriously, because you can save a PowerPoint into 4K video. So you can create these beautiful slides very quickly in PowerPoint using transparencies you've made in Photoshop. PowerPoint has really helped me to hack it. But no, in relation,
you don't have to spend all your time working on complex animations.
No, you don't. PowerPoint is for 2D animation. PowerPoint is a fabulous. Tina's cracking up laughing here. Tina is dying. Don't worry, Tina. That's going to be okay. That's my next fucking Odyssey then. That's a promise now. That's my Christmas special. And I'll tell you, it won't be a fucking toy show either.
Yes. Oh, nice.
All right. Well, it's been a good virtual pub again. We'll do this again here in 2 weeks, I think. And definitely be coming at you guys tomorrow with The Week in Strange.
So that's the end of it for this year. That's our last virtual pub in 2021.
Is that right?
I think. Did you see a lovely page on Facebook, Squatting Slabs and Tracksuits?
Oh, yeah, it's a great page, that.
It's fabulous.
I've been following that for years.
In Podgorica in Montenegro, they put up the 2022 sun as 2022. No, they put it up as 2202. So then they tried to reverse it. It's so funny, Squatting Slabs and Tracksuits. It's magic.
And there's another one called Slavic Science. It's absolutely
yeah. And did you see in Squatting Slabs and Tracksuits, they had the phase tester in Hungary? They had the phase tester up against the door handle and the phase tester lit up. It's fabulous. Squatting Slabs and Tracksuits. I'll say this to anybody who's been following us over the year. We do greatly appreciate all your support. We greatly appreciate all of the kindness we've received, both in emails and messages from each and every one of you. When you get in touch with me, I'm sure I speak for so many other people, to tell us how much you appreciate what we're doing. It matters an awful lot. We hope you have a very peaceful and prosperous new year. We send you all our best wishes, everybody who's following us, all of the tribe, and we do hope we continue to be fabulous in 2022.
Splendid.
That was better than
Christine said.
Best place to be in the world.
Yeah, I feel positive about 2022. I really do now, because I feel like that we're in control. So if anyone takes it from this show tonight, is that like we're getting control again of, we're putting the wheels back into the slots rather than them constantly pulling them out. And I don't know what it is. I totally agree with what Greg said. Something happened this week. And, it's the flip over.
Tina's cat just came in there as well,
Yeah, I showed my pussy.
You fucking stole the punchline from
me. You'd have to get up early in the morning to take out Tina, Christian.
I'm learning this. Also, I mean, Carl was on fire.
You have to stay up all night.
Carl was on fire tonight. You know, I thought, you know, he came out with some great stuff tonight. It was so interesting to listen to Carl tonight. You know?
Cheers, Christian. I've been sitting on that for months. I've got to go find some more stuff. It's I got a bit of an obsession with information. I like to learn stuff as quick as possible. Even throughout tonight, I was looking at some other stuff that was coming up as well. See if I could throw it in for an odd little reference, you know. But yeah, thanks for that. I mean, I'm just getting started. I've got to go build up something myself. But yeah, well, I'll let you know.
I think one of the things that some of our followers who have the best will in the world can make the mistake of thinking that they're following mainstream. But they're not. We're just doing our shit ourselves at our own pace. I'm not monetized. I'm not monetized deliberately, primarily because if you're monetized, you could find yourself tripping over the tax line, and I don't want that. So nothing I do will ever be monetized. But the other side of that is when you're not monetized, then you don't get the normie saying, oh, well, he's got the begging bowl out, which, you know, you look at I'm going to say it at the end of the show, the fucking trannies. If you look at them, they've a bloody GoFundMe on all of their Twitters, you know, whereas, and then some of the alties as well, some of those people who hang around some of the protests are always looking for money as well. But when you're not looking for money, then you're actually fireproof, and nobody can ever say to me, well, I've got the begging bowl out for this. I don't
unless you're financing equipment and stuff like that and production, you're actually financing things.
Well, this is true, but you look at some of the material people are making in the alternative scene, and they're just doing it like Thomas is sitting in a car talking on a phone. They're coming out with some cracking material. Last night, you know, you had a video yesterday, Thomas, it wasn't even all that long, and it was just cracking. It was, you know, you guys did The Week in Strange last Monday, and it was absolute. And I mean, I do mean what I say, that The Week in Strange last Monday, totally, I feel differently still from it. And it was absolute last Monday. If anybody who's listening now, anybody out there who's listening now hasn't come across the most recent Week in Strange, it's an absolute must listen. It was just fabulous from start to finish, and I'm so glad that I, you know, overcame my bad humor and pain in my ass and listened to it at the time that I could. I had to download it, but it was superb. And you know, we don't have to have high production standards. We don't have to have snazzy equipment. We have to have our hearts in the right place, and I have a feeling we do.
Yeah, well, I have my heart both places because there's a very high quality Roberto Calvi documentary coming out that's very shortly. So I have my foot in both worlds, both the punk rock side and the high production side.
Let's continue to create the path as we walk it. That's what I say.
If you were to tell John Waters and Gemma O'Doherty that they would be at the fulcrum of counterculture in this country at the end of 2021, they would probably have laughed, and I would surmise that they probably still would, because they did not do it deliberately. And this is how countercultures arise. If you say, hey guys, we're going to go on the man, yeah, we're going to do our it's a counterculture, then you should be working in RTE. But it's when it happens involuntarily and spontaneously and naturally evolves. That's how John and Gemma have evolved.
Kyle Rittenhouse in America.
Oh, fuck yeah.
That was a big one.
Yeah, we'll leave it with that, okay?
Yeah.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.